the reason why people are trying to take over entertainment and media is because it is the deceptive way of winning the hearts and minds of people, because you don't see it at first because you're just watching movies.
Hey guys, how's it going? Matt from Foulball Productions here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're doing well, because I'm doing phenomenally. Thank you so very much. This is the MFer podcast, number 13. I did miss the past 2 weeks. Last week was a little rough, just getting back from Vegas and reorganizing my life. That was tough, but I did intend on releasing a podcast the week I went to Vegas, and I soldiered on that Tuesday night, and I stayed up late and I recorded it, and it was kind of like this really long stream of consciousness about my time in LA and how I ended up getting into YouTube. And then when I went to edit it, I didn't record a single second of the audio. So the whole podcast was gone, lost to the sands of time and the ether. And I was like, it's already too late. I cannot re-record this. And I intended on doing it from Vegas, but I didn't. But this week I bring you a guest, friend of mine, someone that I met on one of the Vegas trips and hung out again with in this last Vegas trip. He's a great YouTuber. If you don't know him, make sure you go give him a sub. Please welcome Maxfield Von Priestley.
Oh my gosh, how can I even thank you enough for that intro, man? That was fantastic. I'm so sorry to hear about that podcast, dude. Well, it's funny because that's the frustrating thing, is that you don't actually know until afterwards, until the hour is over, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I just realized that none of it is salvageable. But no, thank you again for
literally
just
nothing you can do about it. Yeah,
in the void. But no, thank you again for having me on, man. I've really been enjoying these style formats of your podcast. I've always tried to, whether watch the MFer Cocktail Lounge or whatnot, but this is really, it's just such a streamlined, more intimate level of getting to know who you are and your information and how you respond to different topics and stuff. So yeah, thank you for having me on. And what's cool about this too is like you said, we were just in Vegas recently. And the conversations that we have in Vegas are pretty much like how we talk even behind scenes on the podcast and stuff. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I've been watching your stuff since Gary was shouting you out before when I was a lurker. I was hearing about you from Gary and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I know who this guy is. So
dude,
but yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
That guy is so generous with his time. I mean, the fact that he came on my channel the first time when it was I don't know, I had maybe 350 subs, 400 subs, something like that. Because I had one video that went well about The Expanse, and that that was cool, nice little boost. And then Jake D managed to get Gary on the channel to talk The Expanse, which was just okay, all right, cool. And he came on, and I always tell people to go back and watch that episode, because I'm talking a mile a minute for the first 20 minutes, because I was so nervous. But he's a good dude, man. He's really very
awesome.
generous, and he lends his platform to people too. He promotes you, he'll shout you out to put on Instagram. He was on that 70s rock fans channel yesterday.
Yeah, man. So I think what's great about that too is there's no need for him to do that, right? It's not a necessity for him to try and promote smaller channels or try and, I was watching a video from Eric July the other day, and this detractor of his was on the show telling him, I hope you use your platform wisely, because, you should be bringing other smaller creators and comic book makers and all this stuff. You should be bringing them up. And I'm like, dude, he has no obligation to do this. Yeah, it would be nice, and that would be a respectful thing to do, but the man is trying to make his own comic book company. He also has to keep himself busy and feed his family and his coworkers and employees. And so that's why I love Gary, is because he doesn't have to do that with these smaller channels, and yet he still chooses to go out of his way, take the time, and still come onto our channels or do live streams or even shout us out. So it's pretty rad.
Totally. I mean, and thing with Gary too is he also like when you meet him, there isn't any kind of like fame barrier.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have
Absolutely.
that kind of like, oh, you know, like I'm being polite and saying hello. Like he's interacting with you as if like, you know, you guys have known each other for years. It's very, very cool. He's got a great like soul, just a good sense of himself, a good sense of this whole thing. No one deserves it more. What you're saying about the whole Eric July thing, though, it's so funny when people say that, like, you know, hope you use your platform for good, as if Eric July was like handed CNN or something like that. Like, it's a YouTube channel that he built from the ground up.
Yeah.
Like, it's his. He can do anything he wants with it. You know, it's just such a weird thing to put that on him. Like, I hope you. It's like you use your own platform for good. You know, if you think it's just this easy slam dunk, go ahead, man. Build it
Yeah, I
up.
think I think yeah, like a big thing after I watched the entire interview, and you guys can watch it on Eric July's channel. But I think basically this guy sounded like he was upset that his comic was not being promoted as much as Eric July, and to me that says, well, people like understandably you haven't either put the time in, or even if you did put the time in, like you need to continue to market, or you need to continue to do all this stuff. Eric has been on YouTube for longer than anyone in this fellowship, arguably, I think, because he started with music and then he went to kind of more politics, and now he's doing, well, no, he was doing comic reviews even back in the
I
mid
think that's how he
2000s.
started. I think he started
Yeah.
with comic, like music, and then into comics. I don't even think he started talking politics until several years after that.
Yeah. And yeah, the cool thing about the his comic that he's promoting, ISOM, is like most people would say, oh well, he's just saying promoting it as a non-woke comic. But if you actually watch his stuff, like it's hard to actually find a moment in time where he is like, guys, this is going to be the most non-woke thing you guys have ever seen. All I hear him saying is like, I can't wait to show you the universe, and I can't wait to show you like how this character interacts with the other villains or the other heroes. I'm like, what's non-woke or woke about that? It's just good storytelling. And that's what, it's hard to disprove that, but when you're a detractor, you always have to find something, right?
I think what they're probably latching onto is how some of the right wing media has been promoting it.
True. Yes,
Because I'm
absolutely.
fairly certain that the New York Post ran with a headline similar to that. Which, look, I everybody gets a little tired of like what's woke, what isn't woke, especially now where we've been talking about this for so long, and it's obviously it's mainstream now, so people get tired of it. My chat gets tired of it. I understand, but it's still pretty relevant. You know, it
Mhm.
still matters. I mean, it's not like we're in a post woke entertainment renaissance or anything like that. I mean, you're watching She-Hulk right now, right? I mean,
Yeah,
is that not,
unfortunately.
isn't that like the peak of agenda laden content where, I mean, that's really, it's almost, that's the whole point, is to just make those points. Like, that's why this content exists. Like, entertainment is so much further down the list than let's get the talking points out.
Dude, it's and this is why I love coming on here, and why I love listening to you, because like you explain in such an intelligent and like wise kind of discerning way of why these entertainment, because like you and I could both come on here and go like, oh well, it's just woke piece of garbage, and it's like, okay, we're just kind of recycling the same talking points, but what you've mentioned right now is like so much deeper than just it goes beyond just the, oh it's like agenda and woke, because it's bad storytelling, and it's poor writing. And I think that the for me, when I watch it, it feels like the writers and the producers are kind of inept when writing these characters. They it's not a matter of like, you know I don't know, it has become this kind of peak, uh I'm inserting myself into the show. You can definitely see that the writers are kind of speaking through Jennifer Walters, who's the protagonist, who is She-Hulk in the show. And so much of that is just like laden with like heavy-handed intersectionalism. Like, and that's what's so difficult about watching it, is because it doesn't feel like a Marvel product. Well, it feels like a product. It feels like it's just something that has been packaged to like give to people without any enjoyment. But it feels like it lacks soul, it lacks heart, it lacks talent, and that's why I didn't appreciate it. But people will come onto my comments on my video that I did, and they'll go, "Oh, well, you just hate it because it's woke," and I'm like, "Well, I'm sure it is, but my issue with it goes much deeper than that. There are levels to why this is not doing as well as other Marvel content."
You're right. It's about the writing, because I think most content that came out of Hollywood for the past, I don't know, 60, 70 years, I would say you could safely generalize that it had a left-leaning slant. Now, that's not the same as woke, because woke is propaganda and agenda talking points. But I think most people are pretty comfortable with content from a perspective they differ with, or is not politically motivated, but has some kind of angle on it. I don't think that that's that foreign to people. However, it's gotten to the point where it's like that there is nothing else but that. That's the entire thing. Did I lose you, Max? I think your camera froze.
Hey, so sorry about that, dude. My
It's okay.
internet just died. So,
Oh, don't worry about it.
um,
I'll just edit it out, make it seamless,
okay.
seamless as I can. But it's a blip. No, but to your point, like what you were saying, it really is more about the writing. If a content creator has a left-leaning slant or something like that, or even a right-leaning slant, it would bore me from any direction where it's coming from. Like if you are just saying like, oh, this is what my opinions are, this is what you're supposed to think, I don't even care if I agree with them. I would just be like, oh, stop it. The lens is okay. It's really, like, you're right. It's inept writing. You can convey these principles or these truths or these things in characters, in storytelling, if it's written competently. But if you're just beating the audience over the head and just saying like the one note, I always go back to like saying something like murder is bad. Like if you had a character saying murder is bad, you'd be like, oh God, we know. Okay, man. Like, thank you for laying that out for us. Like, appreciate that. You enlightened me. But it's the bluntness, it's the lack of precision, and it's the arrogance to assume that you can get it, that's entertaining, that you can get away with that.
It treats the audience like such, idiots. Like
It does.
it treats the audience so disrespectfully, and I think that's why a lot of our reactions to these things are so like genuine and like more honest about how we feel about this. Because when someone disrespects you, you obviously are going to kind of take offense to that. And it's not that we have an issue with like them personally, it's that we have an issue with what they're doing to our characters or our stories and stuff. Like, I don't care about what you do outside of like, your film. And that's a whole different conversation about can you separate art from artist, right? Or the creative aspect from the creator. But like I was saying, yeah, um, I think it's interesting that the writers have no real respect for its audience, because that, even from a transactional standpoint, even if they didn't care about the audience, they could at least pretend to and still make money. You know what I mean? Like even me being super cynical, and if it's just someone being like, "Listen, I just want a ton of money. What do the fans want? Just give
Yeah.
it." Like that's what they could do, and it would be simple. But they still continue to choose to be like, "No, we're not doing that. I want to write my story," and that's fine. But when they still disregard and continue to disrespect the audience, that's when it becomes like an issue, right?
Who knew that the heyday of audience was just that blind greed? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, who knew that was the best part of Hollywood, was like when they just
Yeah.
when they were like, just money, money, money. Like, I used to look at that like,
I
oh,
love
they
it.
have no principles, they have no values. And it's just like, no, God, I wish you didn't. Go back to having no principles. You were way better.
Dude, right? Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, how we're like preferring like, hey, just be money hungry, greedy businessmen. Like I would much prefer that right now, because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
going to produce something that like, and that's why I think people are upset with the decisions that Warner Brothers and Discovery are making right now, because Zaslav is very like, he's a very transactional leader, like he's very business oriented, and so most of his decisions are going to be made off of Is this going to make me a profit? No, then get rid of it. Like, it's just really cut and dry.
And it's one of those things where that's actually like, you don't have to embrace that as your true north as to why you create things. I think that
Right.
that can really mess up a creator if you're literally just money only, because what ends up happening is then you it's almost becomes some hollow, boring product. I mean, just look at like how many YouTubers out there just make like clickbait, and it's to get attract. It's boring, and
Yeah.
if you're a creative, you're like, well, what works in the market? It's like, ugh, it's so gross. But what it will do, because there is a higher bar now and it does have to sell, it will force creatives to actually produce something worth buying, which should be the bar, should be the absolute standard. I did want to get back real quick to She-Hulk, though, because I read an article, and I think it was Bounding into Comics, if I'm not mistaken, that the second episode of She-Hulk, I think the headline was, should have been the first episode. Was the second episode as bad as the first?
Not in terms of, so if you had the first episode, it wouldn't be as, like, I guess it wouldn't draw you in or be as appealing. It would be just a very bland kind of meh opener. And I think what they wanted to do was they wanted to set a precedence and make a statement with their first episode and say, this is what you're seeing. You are going to get feminist agenda. You're going to get intersectionalism between the different characters. You're going to get lackluster humor and poor writing choices. And you're going to get very moral, ambiguous protagonists. From my perspective, anyone who watches Jennifer Walters in that first episode and goes, this is someone I would love to be, there's something wrong with you, because she is completely morally inept. Like, she is completely insufferable. And that's really frustrating when you could write her so much better. And so in that second episode, it's more of like understanding kind of who she is, her quirks, the comedic timing. It's definitely more slow paced, but I think it would have been, as you said, probably a better pilot. But it wouldn't have had that sting, that initial, like, here you guys go, like, get ready for this, and it's like, oh, and then everyone makes a video about it.
Yeah, which I wonder whether that's sometimes a choice. Sometimes I wonder if they're like relying on us to do their marketing for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no press, all press is good press. Whereas, so it's like it explodes. You see Matt Walsh like just eviscerated. I don't know if you saw that clip of him.
Oh my God, that video is so good.
So good.
But yeah, he went in hard on that.
And he's just that articulate, patient, well thought out take was just, you couldn't even argue with it. But I wonder if that's kind of part of it. Like, they're going to be like, we're going to go so ham-fisted with this. We're really going to let it off the chain, and then everyone's going to talk about it. And then She-Hulk will be all in the media, and then that'll draw an audience in. I wonder sometimes if that's how they do it, because we take the bait a lot. You know what I mean?
We absolutely do. I mean, and like you said, there are channels that literally how they survive is through clickbait. You know what I mean? It's not through any type of creative decisions on their channel. It's more so of just a reactionary type of news media, which is fine. I mean, that is how those channels are run. And there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, there are channels that decide to, whatever comes out, it's just the next thing for them to talk about. And sometimes that can be to the detriment, because like you said, all press is good press. So yeah, I wonder if these executives or marketers for these big companies like Disney and Amazon are promoting this stuff on the basis of, we're going to dunk on the chuds or whatever, or like, we're going to own the right, the conservative right. You see it in comic books a lot. There's a comic coming out this week in an Avengers comic called Judgment Day, where there's a few panels, and I'm sure it'll come out. You guys will see it this week, but there's a few panels where it is just so on the nose, where it's like trying to own the conservative right, or the YouTubers, that I'm like, man, it's just not even like, you guys are lowering your prospects when you like come down to you should be writing about like otherworldly things, not about YouTubers and like conservative media. You know what I mean? That's so like
Small.
modern and it's so small. Yeah, it's very narrow-minded thinking. If you are a creative, like your vision should be much greater than that, right? But I don't know.
And you think about, I mean, there's something that I read that it was like, I forgot what percentage, but it was a tremendous amount of percentage of content that people are watching in this 24-hour sphere was created in the previous 24-hour sphere. So that
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
so much stuff is so recyclable, just new and recyclable, and it's just or sorry, not disposable. But when it comes to something like a medium, like a text, like a comic book, that even if it is something that we consume and we move through, that's supposed to have longevity. And if you're
Mhm.
talking about something so small and something so modern as that I mean, that's disposable as toilet paper. I mean, you one
Might as well
time,
be.
might as well be. I mean, yeah, might as well be. But it just you go right through it, and it's like you're never gonna go back to something like that. Even if you were one of those rah people, in 4 years, you're
Mhm.
gonna what go back to this and be like, yeah, still, like it's it'll have no
Yeah, well,
impact.
once the dust settles, like there's a great channel. It used to be called Diversity in Comics, but now it's
Yeah,
called
yeah,
Comics with
boy.
Your Boy Zach. Yeah, your boy Zach, and he always mentions this. It's going to be so weird when like we look back on this a decade later, 2 decades later, and we're like looking back at like comics that are being produced here in 2021 or 2022. And we're going to be like, this is so weird. Like it's going to seem like some odd ancient text because it will have aged so poorly. And like the kids of other generations, when they read like Thor from Walt Simonson, uh, it's what I like to call like timeless versus timely. Like those books are going to be timeless. You can read them now. You could have read them 30 years ago, or you could read them 30 years from now into the future, and they'll still have weight. They'll still have resonance with people. But like you said, like someone who reads like a book now and then reads it again a decade later is going to be like, this is so odd. It seems very timely for this era.
It's gonna seem so dated. It's gonna be like those 80s movies that are like all about like shopping and rad culture. You're gonna be like, oh, good boy, that was a weird time in history. I was thinking too, it would be weird. It's gonna be weird to look back and see like a 30-year-old YouTube video.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right.
Isn't that gonna be because there are videos now that are like 15 years old. You know, YouTube's been around that long. There's like I was looking at Chad Vader, which is a was like a little YouTube sketch show about Darth Vader's brother, and he was a night shift manager at a grocery store,
That
and
sounds
he
awesome.
still wanted to like rule like it was the Empire. It was pretty funny, but I looked at those videos 14 years ago. Those came out,
Oh my
and
god.
they're still up, and it's like that's man, it's gonna almost be like the history of the 21st century is gonna be all documented on YouTube. As long as those servers stay up, I mean, we're gonna it's could be kind of permanent. It's not like YouTube's going anywhere now. No
Yeah.
reason to think it's going to go anywhere in the next 10 years. So that's going to be kind of wild. It's going to
No,
be
that's
a living historical archive.
that's a great point, man. And it's like, yeah, when I like say I'm doing a research paper or I'm, even just looking up tutorials about something, I come to YouTube to like learn like, different things. And there are professors and scholars who will put up videos on here about different historical periods of time or and I'm not saying all of it is accurate because if you were only to base your information off of YouTube, you would still be strongly misinformed. Like there's so much out in the world, like
Of
just
course.
going and visiting other places and interacting with people. But YouTube is a great starting point to start kind of introducing some of that information. So yeah, I can see like kids even now and in the future going to YouTube to being like, I wonder what this movie was like, and then come and find our movie reviews or something like that. It's going to be really interesting. I do enjoy watching older, like one of my favorite YouTubers on this platform is JonTron.
I don't know.
And I think he's just so fun. He's got like now I'd say he probably has like anywhere from 3 to 6 million subscribers, somewhere like that. Whereas like you
Pretty
look at
solid.
I know, I was about to say, I think it's 6 million. I gotta go and check. But he's been doing he like I think his oldest video was from like early 2000s, like even before
Wow.
2010. And I just love watching that old stuff though, because it's so much fun to watch the passion that a lot of these creators had. And it's still like that's still such an early stage of YouTube where people were like finding out how to do this. And at the end of the video, they'd be like, click this thing to go follow find my next video. And it's not there anymore because YouTube has evolved so much too that like you don't have like there are just little things like that that I thought was were so interesting. But
Well, what's it like? What's it, Mr. Plinkett? He's been
yes,
they've been doing
dude, Red
that.
Letter Media.
Yeah, I mean, I remember they did Avatar, and they did like
Yeah.
the prequels. Obviously, not when the prequels came out, but very quickly, very very timely after that. Those videos, and that's, I mean, that's like old. That's like
Yeah.
the dramatic squirrel meme. You know what I mean? Like that's like proto internet.
That's so funny. What there was another meme. Oh, it was the screaming goats in Thor: Love and Thunder. They brought back the
Yeah.
screaming goats meme, and I was like, "Isn't that a little old?" But yeah, no, yeah, you're right. It's funny to look at. Like, you can always determine what phase of the internet when you watch a meme or you see what meme is played, and you're like, "Oh, that was early 2000s."
And because the internet is so disposable and you go through stuff so much, it feels so ancient.
Yeah, yeah.
Like looking at like a Rage comic now feels ancient.
It definitely like it feels ancient and yet kind of like what we were talking about, timeless versus timely. It doesn't feel dated though. Like I guess I would
No.
differentiate between like aged and dated, right? Because like I think aged you can recognize, man, this has like some historical significance to it. But like dated just feels like why am I reading this or watching this now? Like it seems so like it doesn't fit in, right? But
That's a good point. I didn't even really think about that. But if you think about like a Rage comic, like Rage Comics wasn't like about like the Bush administration. It
yeah.
was just about some funky little aspect of life that was kind of funny and quirky. But I look at a lot of memes, and even now, most memes are socially relevant,
Mm.
whether it's a critique or an insult or agreeing with the whatever. It's almost like so much content, just so much of our culture, our conversation is just about what's happening right now, and reflecting on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there was a video I was watching in one of the classes I was in, and they were basically talking about how newspapers are a thing of the past. Like, who reads newspapers, right? And it was a comedy sketch, basically discounting the credibility of newspapers. And the joke was that this comedian walks into the New York Times, and he goes, "Hey, do you guys have any like any newspapers that are have information that came out today?" And they're like, "Well, no, that'll be tomorrow's newspaper." And I thought just that simple line was so interesting because now something comes out like an Ezra Miller story, boom, you've got articles and videos within the first hour of an Ezra Miller story dropping, as opposed to the next day. Like if you're behind 24 hours, you've already missed it.
Yeah,
And
it's
I think
boring.
that yeah, yeah, right. And that's what's so damning is like we as a society and we as a culture have not slowed down. We have just continued to speed up and speed up and not sit in any type of emotion or feeling or sensibility or like just allowing ourselves to be present because we're always looking for like the next thing.
Hmm.
And it can be super overwhelming. I think that's why a lot of people now have so much anxiety because they're like,
It's
what's going to happen next?
I buy it. I mean, I definitely did not read nearly as much news as I do now, like with like the
Mm,
YouTube thing. Mostly because I need something to talk about. I do the Culture Crime Fighters with Vidge. We every Sunday night I do the at least 4 hour cocktail lounge, and I do this
yeah.
show and sometimes other streams on top of that. Generally, I do need fodder for those to have to talk about something to stay relevant. I wonder like what the perspective of someone who doesn't read any of that would be. If you just don't
Yeah.
keep up on any of this, do you notice the change? Do you feel the change? Or are you just sort of completely unplugged from it? Like, oh, I don't know. Who cares?
Now, and that's a good point that you bring up, and I'd love to hear your take, like from where like what you do and in your line of work and how you interact with people, and if they have, because I would say that most people that we interact with on a daily basis are what you like people would consider normies. They don't really keep up with any type of entertainment news. They just kind of consume the next product and walk away, and if they liked it, they liked it. If they didn't, they don't really care, which is fine. I mean, I'm not knocking that. But I think it is interesting that now we're even seeing normies start to go like, man, what the fuck is happening with Disney? You know, or like even they're starting to kind of recognize some of this stuff. But do you like in your line of work, do you have anyone talking about entertainment or anything within culture war stuff or no?
Kind of. I mean, being in the food service industry, you're often there's a lot of creative types that tend
Yeah.
to gravitate towards that job. It's a good way to maintain a job that's pretty well paying without a lot of commitment. So you can also do like your other stuff on the side. Like there was a girl at the last restaurant that I was working at who like really knew her movies, and we would always have conversations about stuff like that. She was pretty sharp. She was definitely more on the left-leaning thing. The other thing too about my perspective is that I live in Austin, Texas, and it's
Mm,
extremely left-leaning here. So it's
yeah.
it's hard to kind of find someone that has like a discerning point of view. And if they don't have that point of view, they pretty much just have like the opposite point of view, which is like right-wing or concern. So there isn't really like a lot. I don't encounter it just in my spheres, but I'm also not around like a lot of people who are that's their job is to analyze these things and think about them.
Right.
It's they have their own lives going on. So what I get is there are people that notice it. There's people that maybe comment on it, but there's kind of like I have okay, here's a good example. There's a guy that I used to work with, this dude Eddie, good guy, and he big Lord of the Rings fan, right? And he doesn't like when they ruin the characters or whatever, right? He always bothers him. So one night, I mean, I swear, it was after the bar closed. We were just standing outside this bar talking for like an hour, and he just would not like. He's like, I'm not gonna judge the show until it comes out, and I'm like,
Mm,
I get it, man. But how many times do you have to go through this before you're going to recognize the pattern, right? It's like,
yeah.
and look, keep your mind open. But I almost felt bad for him. I was like, I kind of want to protect you from this, man. Because it's like, you've maintained this optimism here. And it's just like, bro, it's going to get bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that's probably as close as to critical, like in sort of like, and I don't mean to be arrogant about this or feel like I know everything, but I do feel like there's so few people that genuinely grasp that there is an institution associated with all this content, that there is a body of an intellectual body and doctrine that needs to be adhered to, and that's where
Mm,
that's the core of where so much of this is coming from. I think it just seems more amorphous to them. They don't quite track like, oh, it's just sort of left leaning, oh, it's kind of feminist, oh, it's this, that, and the other.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess I kind of I don't know. What do you experience?
That's so interesting, and first, I want to. You said your coworker was talking about Lord of the Rings stuff, and I do like. I think to that response because I think a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm just going to wait till the show comes out," and like you said, you almost kind of want to usher them into this like world of, "Hey, a lot of us have done that before with." Star Wars, Star
I
Trek,
know. I want to
Doctor
give him the
Who,
red
like
pill. I
Marvel,
know.
Disney. Yeah, you want to just kind of, well, here you go.
All I'm offering you is
And
the truth.
right. And there is I think there is something to be said about that because objectively speaking from like a if you look at a show and if you objectively look at it from like a filmmaking lens, sure, there may be good things about the show, like the cinematography might be great, and maybe no one can argue that. Maybe the soundtrack is fantastic, or maybe the acting is very superb. So, from a filmmaking standpoint, sure, maybe the show might be good. But if people are arguing whether it's good based off of the works of Tolkien, that to me, and some people might disagree, to me that's complete and utter bullshit, because the showrunners themselves have been very adamant about saying we have taken the creative liberty to just completely like get rid of that, like whatever Tolkien said, cool, thanks, like, but we don't really care. And to me that's why the show will not be good whether I need to watch it or not. It's not going to adhere to the legendarium, the fantasy of what Tolkien imagined. So I think there are people who will base their opinions off of a show, whether it's good or not, solely on the basis of filmmaking and not necessarily from the like lore aspect of
Mm-hmm.
things. Which is like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's that kind of wait and see crowd that gets a lot of money into the show because everyone
Yeah.
watches it and they go, well, it's not for me. And then, well, it's like, oh, well, that means the whole show just got watched, and you spent your money to watch it.
And I don't
So yeah,
necessarily blame that. I think there's a
true.
prudence
Yeah.
to that. There's an internal patience and sort of an optimism that I respect
Yes. Yeah.
in that. But to me at this point, and I hate to be fire and brimstone, but I think we've crossed the threshold. I think we've pretty much gotten to this really is a culture war. And it's
Yeah.
like you are either going to, aggressively support it, passively support it, or reject it. I don't really think there's a lot of in between anymore. And I'm not saying pick sides and, I'm drawing lines, but it's gotten to the point where, you combine the agenda with, ESG scores and all these other things that are nefariously attached to this worldview. It's grander than just whether Lord of the Rings is good
Mhm.
or not. It's does Western culture, is it allowed to exist?
Mhm.
Are its myths, are its traditions, are its what's good about it? Are they allowed to continue in this new global society? And the impression I get is there's a lot of people who are aggressively trying to say no, it cannot, and it needs to go, and it needs to be replaced with something new and better, or whatever the goal is. So that's where I get to the point where I'm like, okay, we're actually not just talking about whether this TV show is good. We're not talking about whether this movie is entertaining. We're talking about whether like the legacy of millions of people of the world gets to continue.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's pretty
the
significant.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because it's the themes of it. Like it's not just like you said, the cultural significance of that of his books, of his writings, of his works have certain themes attached to them, and none of his themes were ever to exclude people. And so I think that's what's so, like, you to use your word, nefarious, I think you said previously, and it's very disingenuous, it's very inauthentic, and it's weaponizing a lot of this culture war in order to get clicks or in order to get fake reviews and whatever. And it almost, it's frustrating because you want these people to be as authentic and genuine as possible, and like you're just wishing that they would just come out and say, you know what, you're right, we just did all this just to push our agenda. And at least you'd be like, finally, thank you, you at least you were honest.
Yeah.
But
But it relies on being dishonest and deceptive. That's
correct,
part of it.
absolutely, yeah.
Razor Fist put out a good series of videos. One that is called Hollywood Was Always Red.
Oh, interesting.
Fascinating video, and it details a lot about sort of communist infiltration in Hollywood in like the 40s and the 30s, and this sort of this another legitimate culture war. And that's where apparently that rumor that Walt Disney was an anti-Semite apparently isn't true. Apparently, it's just
Oh,
something that the Communist Party that was trying to take over the labor unions in Hollywood was spreading to discredit him. And
wow.
there was kind of a lot of that. And there's that movie On the Waterfront that by Elia Kazan of Marlon Brando as the washed up boxer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Apparently, that entire movie is a metaphor for how he was involved with this communist party, and he just rejects it and just starts fighting them. He's like, "What a bum," which is what I am. Like this whole thing, and like you did this, and you like he's like calling people out for being like nefarious,
Whoa.
and yeah, and so it's not even that novel. This sort of new thing, this sort of what feels like a new culture war. Apparently, it's been around for quite some time.
That's so interesting, man. And on the topic of Razor Fist, he I don't think he put out an individual video about this, but he was talking about this on a stream where, and I always go back to this whenever, because I hate the disingenuous argument of, well, why do you care so much? Or like, it's not that important. Like, just get over it, or like, don't watch it. And it's like, okay, man, but you have to think about the fact that our culture comes from movies. Like our society, our themes of how we live everyday life, our escapist entertainment comes from fucking movies and TV shows. And
Our
like that
values
shit,
too.
our values, like that is important. As a young kid, if you go into the movies and you watch Lord of the Rings like I did, and you see the moralistic values of Aragorn, who is selflessly trying to get these hobbits to the next location, and trying to find his way as a lone ranger, and humbling as like a humble man working his way up to king, and what that means, the sacrifices and the honor and the nobility. You look at that as a kid and you go like, I want to be like that, regardless of what he looks like. He could have been, a female black woman, and I'd be like, sure, I want to be like her, because those moralistic values are what I took away from it. But yeah, Razorfist essentially says that in that stream he was talking about that the reason why people are trying to take over entertainment and media is because it is the deceptive way of winning the hearts and minds of people, because you don't see it at first because you're just watching movies, right? It's just, you're just watching a movie until you start to like take in that information and then spew it out into the world. And that's what's so dangerous about it if we don't recognize
Yeah,
it.
it's
Whereas
true.
like, yeah, so yeah.
It's going back to like what you were talking about with the people that I my sphere. Well, I used to work with a lot of kids, like in their early 20s, you know what I mean, who are like,
Mhm.
this is the culture that they grew up in. When I was coming up, and I kind of do want to transition into this because I know that you're currently experiencing this. When I was
Mhm.
growing up, I had, there's kind of the standard American education. You get a little bit older, they kind of show the nuance. And then when I got to college, they're like, everything you learned was a lie. Here's all these evil things about America,
Oh
and,
god.
like the power structures and the hierarchies and all this type of stuff. Granted, I was a sociology major, so I basically did it to myself. But and then when I moved to LA, I saw a lot more of that. It was almost like it wasn't just sort of like this fringe thing that was happening in colleges. It was kind of the mainstream consensus. And once
Right.
again, a relatively biased environment. But when I was talking with this guy that I used to work with, and he grew up in the Bay Area. He got that education when he was in grade school. He'd
Whoa.
never had any other education but a critical theory education. And then I started to see it like in these kids. It's not even like it's an opinion. These things aren't debated. They are the
Right.
ground base level of how to look at the world. And
Mm.
it's pretty terrifying. And it's become sort of ubiquitous as this is the way to look at it. And if you don't look at it, you are over here in like they genuinely like the alt right, like Nazi like realm. That's where you exist because that's how far you are from our consensus. And I
Mhm.
know that you posted something the other day about this because you're currently in college and you
Mhm.
are experiencing a lot of that firsthand. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And thank you for mentioning it and bringing it up. But yeah, it's a totally different world. It was partly my own hubris, but partly my maybe just my not fully understanding of the fact that I am living in California. I am going to a private school, so there's a lot of wealth there. And when you see a lot of people who have these like privileged lifestyles, they tend to make up things to not objectify them, but oppress them. You know what I mean? Or they say that they're guilty because of their wealth, or they're guilty because of the color of their skin. But then they try and force that on you, and that's what I've seen a lot. Is basically, if you're not in the club, if you're not in this progressive mindset, this hive mind, then you are excluded. You are not part of us, and we want nothing to do with you because you are the enemy or you are evil. And the thing that is unfortunate is that they don't even know me. It is simply because I exist that they have this opinion. But it is a lot of younger white women that I've seen this from. It is the culture of young kind of white females that thinks that it's very cool to have this type of mindset that's very exclusionary. They include everyone except for guys who look like us. You know what I mean? And I'll be very forthright and outward in saying that, I'm a man of faith. I have a minor in Christian ministry. I, served in the Marine Corps for 5 years. So like everything that I am, like because I exist, they hate me, because I am everything that they have been told to hate,
Yeah.
without understanding who I am, where I come from, and to see that like a lot of my stuff just comes from logic, and a lot of my stuff comes from empathy, even though they would not think so. And so that's what I've been seeing within the college realm, as of now, and I'm only in my first week, so I'm like, oh boy,
Wow,
yeah.
dude.
So I'm like, I got a whole other 2 years before I finish my master's degree. But yeah, so like I said, I appreciate you asking. Plenty of little jabs here and there where I was talking about my love of Captain America, and they go, "Oh, of course you would like him because, like, America, right?" And I go, "What's wrong with that?" And they go, "No, nothing." And this was one of the females I was talking to, and she goes, "No, nothing, but like." You're probably one of those guys who like shoots guns because like to boost your testosterone or whatever, right? And I go, I'm sorry, what? I almost like I was taken back by how ignorant of a statement that was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
To yeah,
Dude, I remember I was at a club in LA, like this bar, and it was like, early. It wasn't like late. It was, maybe 9:30, 10. And I was walking, I was, feeling a little loose. I was walking down the stairs, and there were these girls in front of me, and this girl had something written on the back of her jacket. I forgot what it was, and I just read it out loud. And she turns to me and says, "Don't talk to me, you straight white male."
no shit,
Yeah, like says that to me in
dude.
public. Like it was insane. It was insane, man. It's, when I was in acting class, my mom used to tell me, because I would bitch about these people because it was just so impossible to coexist. I mean, it was genuinely,
Yeah,
they made it incredibly difficult. If you did not already agree, it was going to be a problem. And my mom would be like, "Don't bring it up." I'm like, "I never bring it up. I never
exactly.
even talk. I barely even respond. It's just being
Yeah,
hit on all sides, this onslaught." Like, I remember one particular, they were whining about, "Oh, Chris Pratt's a conservative." And they all were just like, "Oh," and it was this whole, it's just, a hive mind is really the only way to describe
yeah,
it. And it's, I when I went to college, when I was studying my sociology thing, I remember I naively took a gender studies course. It was just like on paper, I'm like, "Oh, the differences between the genders and how that affects people. That's really fascinating."
sure, yeah,
Sure. I didn't know when I got in there, it was just going to be like, "You are the problem." It's just like, I'm in the class. Like, what did I
yeah,
do?
like,
I'm
it,
20. Like, I haven't done anything yet. And it was this whole thing. And I remember like I would fight and not fight but disagree, speak my
right,
mind, and that was just nothing but conflict and gossip. And girls, like you said, like the young white women go into like the other parts of the school and tattling
yeah,
on me, and lying about whatever it was they thought I believed. And so I learned to not, as much as I could, not identify, because it's like they will just target you and take you down. But I even realized after a while that's not good enough. It's the fact that you don't agree immediately and vocally that clocks you as an enemy.
And what's interesting is like even if you went into that class and you said like one thing that was a buzzword or one thing that like they agreed with, they'd be like, "Oh, this guy's pretty cool." Even like not even knowing that you're making it up or that you're just regurgitating, like they don't I don't think a lot of the younger kind of people who I hear this from, I don't think they understand what they're saying, like you were saying, like you were talking about before. And what's interesting about your experience is that you went out of your way to go take that class, and instead of informing you and teaching you about like the different um, gender studies throughout history and like looking at the different archetypes of male and female, how they differ, how they're important, like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, they just point the blame on you. And it's like, what am I learning here? Like
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just an evil person just because I
Mm-hmm.
exist. And
And
so that's
and
what's yeah,
no, and further beyond that, that's what millions and millions of young men in this country are
yes,
being taught. That is what's
Yeah.
being drilled into their head. That's the education they're receiving, is that you are bad. You are the problem. And you should feel bad about that. And I don't know how that's going to create a functional society in the future. I don't see how that could contribute to a healthier, more cohesive, like loving society. I feel like that's all only going to create division and hate. I cannot see any other possibility.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's such a great point, because one of the big things that I always continue to say whenever I get into a disagreement with someone at school or anything, I always try and just go, is there commonality here? Can we find commonality? If not, why are we talking right now? Like, if you don't want to find some sort of commonality between this thing that we're talking about, then we can't coexist. And that's what's so frightening about this, is like, people are arguing like, yeah, we should just split the US in half, have it blue and red, because they legitimately either don't want the conversation or they can't have those conversations to discern for themselves whether or not they want to talk to these different these open-minded people. That's how closed off and kind of frightening this now has become, because people just can't comprehend the fact that you and I can both agree on something and disagree on another thing and still be friends, or still be a certain political party. So yeah, that commonality is extremely important now, but it's like, man, I just can't find it anywhere. It's tough to find commonality at this point on anything.
Yeah, I find it a little more prevalent in people that are older. Like
Mm,
I have found people who are like a little bit more, they could still be kind of pretty hard left leaning, but they're not as quick to exclude or quick to judge or quick to attack. At least that's
right.
been my experience of late,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. It's like, oh, that's nice, and it kind of almost takes like, it just sort of takes the punch out of the whole thing, and now we're really just having a discussion. Like, neither person is really at each other's throats. It's just, we're just, kind of like, okay, and you see it that way, I see it this way. It's like, I don't have a crystal ball, I don't have magic insight. This is the point of view I've cultivated from my life and the insights that I've gained. So I can't guarantee that I'm right. It's just what I believe. And that's the same. I think it's the same from the other side. So it's like, if it would be really nice if we could get a little bit more of that kind of, because when people genuinely do listen to each other, you're gonna get more out of it. I think
Yeah.
most Americans are on the same page about what the issues are. They just have very strong and differing opinions on how to solve them. Like
Hmm.
I had discussions with some people that I worked with about like socialism, essentially, and they said how there's a big problem that the corporations are tied in with government, and I'm like, I couldn't agree more. I
Yeah.
totally agree. The only difference is your solution is you want to expand government power, and I want to lessen it, because I think that's the only way to so. But that's just my opinion, and but we really do completely agree that this is a problem. Like we're on the same
Absolutely.
exact page. Like when you're saying commonality, it's like there is, like it's just people have different points of view on the solutions. And I think if we did understand how much more similar we were to each other instead of how different, we would we would truly progress as a country and as a people.
And that's true progression. You know what I mean? Like, we're almost regressing at this point. And yeah, those commonalities, once we do find them, you see humanity in people. Because if you take a political party and you just demonize them just because of who they voted for, or you demonize them because of what color they identify with, or which party they lean more towards, you've demonized them solely on one trait, and it's so like I said earlier, disingenuous, and it's very, very exclusive, instead of being open-minded to the fact that, like, you're a full ass human being that has thoughts and emotions and feelings and all
And
types of different
family
character
and
traits.
like a
Yes.
dog,
Oh my god.
like
Yeah. Yeah, like,
you know.
oh, you like dogs too? Wow, I thought that you like killed babies. And it's like, it's just like, when you demonize someone so much, you can't see those human aspects. And like you said, dude, like, it's such a great point that though we may disagree on one thing, we can agree on another, of like, this is the issue, now how do we solve it? And just by agreeing that there is an issue, you see that humanity because you go, you do have empathy, you do have compassion, you do have patience. Those are human qualities that we all want to kind of aspire to have, right? But when you demonize an entire, race of people or political party, you can't see that, and that's what's so damning.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. And it's a personal challenge of mine too, though, because it's something where I feel a reactionary sort of, I don't even know, like thought or feeling when I kind of get that sense from people, because I'm like, oh, you probably imagine me as the villain, so it's almost hard for me. I almost have my own prejudices now because of all those experiences, where you get this sort of attack, you get this vilification, you got people gossip about you behind your back because you don't think the same way. But it's as much of a challenge of mine to rise above that as it is literally anyone else. And it is one of those things I do try to remind myself of, because I don't want to fall into that trap. I don't want to become like the anti SJW or the opposite of them, just on the other side. I think people will always criticize you, will like try to put that label on you if you're doing what we're doing, which is going on YouTube and talking about it. But that's unavoidable. People's judgments and labels you can't control. All you can control is how you react to it.
Of course, man. And it just shows like your type of maturity and your type of experience in life. The fact that you can have the self-awareness and like understanding to say, I don't want to be the antithesis of this. I want to be the point in the middle where I can bring both together, right? Like it's that whole dilemma that Batman has. He doesn't want to cross that line and become the Joker and kill people. He wants to, in a way, save them from themselves or protect Gotham from these evil beings or whatnot. And so that's kind of what your thought process is about this too, which I really respect, and which I struggle with as well, because it would be so easy for me to fall into the trap of, well, all the people on the left are just SJW, weirdo, evil, I was going to say
Kami.
yeah, exactly. Any word that maybe might get us off of YouTube, you could easily label them that. But that is such an easy, like, just cop out, right? Like it actually takes more time, more effort, more intelligence, more maturity, more wisdom to engage with them and on a different party or on a different religion or anything, and go, hey, you're my neighbor, let's talk, let's hang out, let's do this. And that's much more difficult. Because I have friends that are more liberal and more left. I have friends that are gay. I have friends that are in marriage, like lesbian marriages, and I love them to death because they treat me like a human and they love me just like I love them. And we don't agree on a lot of different things, and yet I still love them for who they are. And that's what I think is missing. And so that's, like I said, testament to you and your maturity, man, because like it would be easy to just completely label an entire party and just go, screw them. I'm going to be the anti SJW. Everything is like, Trump, everything is great, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, let's think about this a little bit more logically.
I think honestly, it's the gift of the curse of living in progressive cities, is because I have to coexist. I can't just vilify everyone I come across. So I'm required to do it, as much as it's a principle. It's also just like a survival tactic, a survival instinct. I literally have to do it. But I think that's good. Like I do think people that get too polarized, right or left, you do just otherize everyone who isn't exactly like you. And I think that's where more oppressive regimes and oppressive structures genuinely do come out of, because there is no humanity for anyone who isn't on the side of you. You just see them as complete. It's become so violently tribal that that's what ends up happening. I mean, that's where, I think we do forget, myself included, that this country used to be genuinely oppressively conservative. It genuinely used to have a homogenous, like mindset, and the power. Like the cancelers, the original cancelers were the right. I mean, they were the ones who would. This is inappropriate. They say these jokes. We don't want him on TV. We want to get rid of him. I'll go to advertisers. So, it can go one way or the other. It's just simply believing a thing doesn't make you any more virtuous than any. Just because you're on that side doesn't make you correct or doesn't make you a good person. I mean, your good person comes from your actions and your principles and your follow through and how you treat your fellow man. I don't care where you land. That's the most important character.
Yeah, dude. There's that. I always look back at that like Satanic Panic era, where like heavy metal was just blasting, and conservative media and conservative, well, not media, because media has always tended to be a little bit more left, but like conservative families and like homes were saying like this is the downfall of society. And I'm looking over, like I'm a conservative myself, and I'm like, dude, I love listening to metal. I'm looking at that and I'm going, I would have been tossed out of my own political party because I fucking love heavy metal and comic books and Halloween and Dungeons and Dragons and like all this stuff that like at the time was seen as like the devil. So yeah, it is very interesting, the dynamics between how these political parties ebb and flow, and how the goalposts continue to move. And like like you said, like alt-right now would be someone who's like moderate. It's just completely changed.
And there's people as traditional liberals that are like, "Oh, you're a Republican." It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like that guy was at Woodstock, like We're going to wrap up because we've crossed the hour threshold. I did want to say, though, my friend, and this on a positive note, I watched a movie last night that I remember hearing about, but for some reason did not get the fanfare I feel it deserved after having watched it. But I watched, it's on HBO Max. I watched Free Guy last night.
Oh, I have heard good things about it with Ryan Reynolds, right?
I loved it. I loved it. I could not believe how much I thought it was like really sweet, fun, funny, very compelling. Like I paused it and there was 40 minutes left. I was like, yes. Like I was like happy that I was just so engaged. Yeah. And it had like a really sweet, good, like loving ending, like the whole, like kind of like almost like a wholesome ending that we just don't get anymore. And it was honestly, I loved every second of it and I couldn't recommend it more.
Dude, that is so rad. I will now have to go check that out.
It was kicked ass. I applauded. I was like, that was fucking great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I had heard some good things about it from like parents had taken their kids to see it or something, and the kids were eating it up and the parents were loving it. But that was pretty much all I heard. I didn't really look into it much. So yeah, dang, I need to go check it out now.
The only thing I would say that they kind of missed the mark on a little bit was the antagonist was too silly to be taken seriously. Like he does have his intimidating moments, but I'd say as like the only real weakness was they kind of leaned into the comedy a little bit too much, kind of the way like Ryan Johnson had what's his face like slipping on a banana peel, in The Last Jedi. Where you're like, I mean, I can't take that guy seriously. It was bordering in that realm, not too bad, but it was. Yeah, it was so much fun. It was, the whole concept is it's kind of like this GTA, like this online GTA, and one of the NPCs just sort of changes his programming a little bit and starts kind of interacting with the world. And so it takes place inside the game and also in the real world. And there's these two dual narratives that are running side by side. It was really kick-ass.
Dude, how rad.
I know.
Well, that sounds badass. And thank you for mentioning it. Because yeah, too many times we hear about all the stuff that's going wrong in media. So to have some stuff be praised every now and then, that's chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss indeed. Max, let the people know where they can find you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you guys can find me at MVP Maxfield Von Priestley. It's a long name, but it is my given birth name. So yeah, go check out my channel. Recently, I've been doing a lot of She-Hulk and Lord of the Rings stuff. This Thursday, I guess you could say Thursday morning, Wednesday night-ish, I'll be doing a episode 1 and 2 review of the Rings of Power because they are releasing it in theaters here in my area. for like free. Yeah, they're doing a free promotional screening, and
Whoa.
so yeah, so I'm gonna go to that.
Oh, dude,
Oh man,
you should take video and shit too. You should, because there's gonna be people dressed up and excited. You should capture the whole event.
I am very interested because, like, at first I was thinking, it's just going to be YouTubers and media platforms that are going to go to this thing, but then I was like, what if it is actual fans, right? So I don't know, man. I'm very intrigued to see what type of people show up,
Dude, you
and I
could
will
make
definitely
some
take
viral
videos.
ass content out of that, man. You should do like show up early, do man on the street.
Ooh, see, I don't have any good microphone to do that with, so I'd have to
Maybe buy
use
one before
figure
you go,
something out.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we'll
because that
see.
would be so much fun. Like, I would love to see that. Like, and then you don't even need to like you just ask how people are feeling about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when you see the excitement, like that. Bro, that's you got right a gold
Or
mine right there, man.
or the nervousness, because I'm sure there will also be people there who are going to be very apprehensive. But yeah, no, it's gonna
Dude,
be a wild time.
if I still lived in California, I would drive down to you and I would make this work. I mean, that is so exciting, and just the like how what an opportunity that is for a YouTuber as well.
Yeah, oh for sure, man. I'm very I'm very thankful and very blessed to be so, like, so nearby a theater that was showing this, and to have the opportunity to go, because I know a lot of people wouldn't be able to make it because of work or something. So yeah, very very grateful and blessed that I get to go do this. It's not anything like press, like I wasn't invited. This is literally something they're just opening up to the public, and they're just saying, in these specific theaters we're going to show the first two episodes so you guys can see, like a kind of a first-hand exclusive, instead of waiting till Thursday evening or Friday evening. So yeah, I'm gonna go into it with a very open mind, I think I'll say.
Cool.
As far as like, I do not agree with how Amazon is approaching the show, but as far as seeing the fans, I'm going to go in with an open mind because I do want to see people there, and hear what they have to say, because
Yeah.
everyone knows what I have to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think and there's also like we all have our kind of predictions, but it's going to be different when we actually see it. And I think the most productive way any kind of commenter, YouTuber, critic, whatever can report on these things is to go in with a genuinely open mind, even if that takes a lot
Right.
of work to get
Yeah.
there. It's the best way to report on it because A, you probably won't miss as much, and B, you'll have a really objective way to discuss it and to rip it apart if it needs to be ripped apart.
Absolutely. And if I do come out with an actual video as opposed to a live stream or anything that does a review, yeah, my two biggest things on my channel are like genuine authenticity, and just truth and down to earth, kind of commentary, if you are going to make that. So if I am going to do a review, it's going to be, if it's good, I'm going to say it's good. If it's bad, yeah, I'm going to rip it to shreds. So that's
Yeah.
just what you guys can expect from me.
I'm
But yeah,
excited to
dude,
see
thank
that,
you.
dude. I will be there. I'm going to watch your content for that. That sounds great.
Well, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, thank you again for having me on the show, man. What a fantastic! I don't even think we touched any of our articles because we just had such great conversation. And like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, like this is kind of how we, maybe with a few more drinks in hand, but this is how we talk at the Vegas meetup. So
Yeah. I honestly, I think sometimes the chat does get a little annoyed that they're not included in the conversation, and I empathize with that. But I think
mhm.
having a one-on-one conversation, this pre-record really does a great job of allowing that to just organically happen. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, man. It was really great to have you.
Dude, of course. Yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to some of your future videos and your live streams and stuff. And like I said, anytime I can be on here, or anytime you can be on my channel, we'll do it. And I look forward to seeing you in Texas at hopefully a future meetup.
Hell
So
yeah. Hell yeah. Well, everybody subscribe to Max's channel. Give him a look. He does great stuff. Also provides a lot of content for his members, which I respect and could absolutely learn from. And if you guys enjoyed this, please press like, subscribe if you have not, and share the video out so that more people can experience this magnificent conversation. Thank you all very much and have a great day.